In this session, we're going to look at the skills of segmenting and blending, which are fundamental to a systematic and synthetic approach to the teaching of phonics. Because in systematic synthetic phonics, individual sounds are identified, these need to be brought together. And you will see here in this quote from the reading framework from the Department for Education, published in 2021, it says, because of the complex alphabetic code of English, children are taught explicitly the correspondences between letters and sounds, as well as the skill of blending the individual sounds together to read. So we have these individual sounds, and in order to be able to read and to make a word, we have to bring them together, to blend them. And then it goes on to talk about synthetic phonics, referring to the verb synthesize, meaning to bring to combine. And then the skill of segmenting words into their individual sounds is needed for spelling. So we have blending for reading and segmenting for spelling. So let's explore those terms.
Segmenting simply means breaking apart. And if you take an orange and cut it into segments, you are breaking it apart. Let's take the example of the word tip. Tip. If I break that down into sounds, it becomes t, I, p. And when we write those sounds down, we find the right letters. We find it is T, I, P. The letters T, I, P make the sounds t, I, p. What about ship? Ship. If I break that down, if I segment it into the phonemes, then it is sh, I, p, sh, I, p. But if I write that down, you will see that the first sound, sh, is made of two letters. Then we have I and p. So we draw a line under those two letters because they make one sound. And then we have our buttons under I, p, sh, I, p. There are three sounds, three phonemes. What about sift? This is harder. Say the word. Feel what your tongue is doing and your lips are doing as you say sift. S, I, f, t. The tricky bit is the f, t at the end. And if you make those sounds yourself, f, t, you will feel your lips and your tongue forming two very different shapes. So, sift, s, I, f, t, is written down with four letters. Each one of those is makes a phoneme. So, s, I, f, t. It is not the same as ship, is it? Because the f and the t are separate, whereas in ship the s and the h come out as sh, not s. Lastly, thrift. Thrift. How many sounds can we hear? Th, I, f, t. And again, th, I, f, t. There are the letters, that's how we spell the word, and the sounds are f. T and the H make f. I, f, t. On the next few slides there are some examples for you. Example 1. Map. Map. The word was map. A, p. When it's written down we see it like this. And each of these letters has a sound attached to it, has a phoneme attached to it. A, p. Example 2. Stick. When I was walking. Example 2 is stick. S, t, I, k. S, t, I, k. So if we put sound buttons underneath, you can see we have a sound for S, T and I, S, T, I, and then the K sound is made by C and K. So there are 5 letters here but there are example 3, plus. Example 3 was the word plus, P-L-U-S, which we write P-L-U-S. Each of those letters has a phoneme, a corresponding phoneme for it. P-L-U-S. And so there are 4. Example 4, plush. The example was plush, P-L-U-S. So we write that P-L-U-S-H, and the sounds, the phonemes, are P-L-U-S. The last sound, the last phoneme, sh, is made by writing S and H together. So again, we have our final example is sheet. Sheet. Our example was sheet. Sh, E, T. Sh, E, T. Now you should only be counting 3 phonemes there. Sh, 1, E, 2, T, 3. But when we write it down, we have 5 letters, because we have sh, made by S and H, E, which is made by using 2 E's when we write it down, and T at the end. So in this example, we have only 3 phonemes. We've talked about segmenting, but now we're going to look at blending. Segment. Example 6. F, L, A, G. F, L, A, G. The phonemes you heard were F, L, A. Example 7. S, M, E, L. S, M, E, L. You heard the sounds S, M, E. Example 8. S, P, U, N. S, P, U, N. You heard the phonemes S, P, U, N. Example 9. F, R, O, G. F, R, O, G. You heard the phonemes F. Example 10. G, L, A, D. G, L, A, D. You heard the phonemes G, L, A, D. Glad. So before children can read a text or spell, they need to have the oral skills of segmenting and blending as part of their pre-reading development. In order to write a word down and in order to be able to identify the sounds in a word for both segmenting and blending purposes, they need to identify the phonemes. And to identify the phonemes, they need to be able to segment, to be able to say a word like flag, and to break it down to f, u, a, g, 4 phonemes. So we're sounding out those individual phonemes and then blend them together. F, u, a, g, flag. These are essential skills before children can decode text and encode text. So we are moving from spoken word to spoken sounds, back to spoken word. Flag, f, u, a, g, flag. When we are thinking about text and the reading process, we are starting with the written word, and we look through the word from left to right. We note the graphemes, the letters that correspond to particular sounds, and we say them in automatic response, and we blend to hear the word. So we are going from written word to spoken word. So we see the word flag, F-L-A-G. We note the graphemes. The grapheme is the representation of the sound, and we see the grapheme F, grapheme L, the grapheme A, the grapheme G. And we know automatically that that makes F, U, A, G. And we blend that, flag, so we can discern the word. We know what those letters mean. Take another example, ship. We scan through the word from left to right, S-H-I-P, and as we are doing that, we are noting the graphemes. Now in this case, we have S and H is one grapheme because that makes the sound sh. So we have the grapheme SH, which makes sh, and then we have I, the I, and then we have the P, which makes P, and then we blend sh, I, P, ship, working from written word to spoken word. Here's an example from the Oxford University Press's phonics scheme, or one of the Oxford University Press's phonics schemes. Jim has a cat, Kim has a cat, Jim has a dog. How do we read that? We see Kim has a cat. We scan and we see the graphemes. We scan from left to right. We see the grapheme K, and we know that that grapheme K makes the sound K. Then we see the I. We know that makes the sound I. Then we say the M. We know that makes the sound M. We've got K, I, M. We blend them together. Kim. That's our first word. This word is difficult. It's a high frequency word, which means it's a word that occurs very commonly in when you read, and children have to learn to read this on sight. We will explore later why that is. But at the moment, you just need to know children need to learn to read this word. They won't sound it out, they just need to recognize it. And that's the same for a or a cat. Kim has a cat or Kim has a cat, whichever you like. The children have to be able to recognize those. But then we get to the next word and we read from left to right. We see the graphemes, C-A-T, and as we go along from left to right, we recognize the graphemes have phonemes attached to them. Let's say the letter combinations, the letters have sounds that we associate with them. K, A, T. And we blend those together to make cat. So we have Kim has a cat. If we're spelling, we're writing, and we're going to be segmenting. We start with a word, say it slowly to identify the sounds. So if I take the word tip, tip, we say that word slowly, tip, and we segment to identify the sounds. T, I, P. And then we think, which are the letters we should use to make those sounds? How do we write the graphemes that we associate with those sounds? T, I, P. That's quite simple. T, I, P. But if we have the word ship, and I say that word slowly, ship, we segment it, sh, I, P, and we want to write it down. The first sound was sh, which is made by two letters, SH. So that grapheme, that representation of the phoneme, is made of two letters. SH makes sh, and we need to know that to be able to spell that word. So we write sh, and then we want a letter for I sound, which is going to be I, and a letter for P, which is P. So we're looking for the graphemes, the appropriate code for the sounds that we are making. So here we are starting, when we are spelling, we are starting with the spoken word, and we are moving to the written word. So let's go back to our example. Jim has a dog in this case. We want to write Jim has a dog. We had Kim has a cat. We're now going to bring out Jim and his dog. So Jim, let's say the word slowly. Jim, we're going to segment it. J, I, M. J, I, M. We have three sounds, three phonemes, and we have to think, what are the graphemes that go with those phonemes? J, I, M. Well, it's probably going to be a J. I is an I. M is an M. Now remember what I said about when children read the words has, a, they just need to be able to recognize those words. It's the same, they have to just be able to spell them. So has and a, those are words that children will learn off by heart. But we want them now to write dog. Dog. We say the word slowly, dog. We segment it into phonemes. D, O, G. D, O, G. We have 1, 2, 3 phonemes. D, O, G. And we think, which graphemes, which letter combinations do we need to write down to represent those sounds? So D is going to be a D, O is going to be a O, and G is going to be a G.
You should now complete the online quiz or audit that accompanies this lesson. If you need to clarify any points, you can go back through this presentation, but also you could have a look at the notes of guidance for practitioners and teachers from Letters and Sounds, which is available in the resources section. It's a short document and it's very easy to read and gives a good introduction to systematic synthetic phonics.